As I said, this scene was the Last Supper and the Passover meal that Jesus shared with his disciples during the last week of his life in Jerusalem. So they'd always shared the Passover meal together. And this time there's 12 followers and Jesus, 12 of his closest friends, 12 of the guys who'd been with them for every miracle and every sermon and every gathering of people following and every challenge of the Pharisees and all that he'd taught and all that he'd faced. These 12 were right by his side. And now they gather for Passover, that celebration of God's redemptive work in the people of Israel. And now Jesus gathers with them again, and he washes their feet. He starts talking and celebrating redemption and starting to mention to them again this idea of his death and the fact that he was about to do this great act of redemption for them and for the whole world. And yet they fully didn't understand it. They were 12 men who'd followed him. They'd listened to his teachings. They'd followed his instructions. They'd been sent out, and they'd come back with stories. They'd been through so much together. And at that meal, they're gathered. They're close. They're the inner circle Jesus has. They all trusted each other, and they all loved each other, and they all worked together. And Jesus says to this group of men, I tell you the truth, one of you will betray me. That's the statement that he makes. And he says it's the truth, and we believe it's the truth. And no doubt they believe because Jesus was saying it, it was the truth. But it's an ugly truth. It's an unbelievable truth. It's a hard truth for them to hear. You can only imagine the 12 of them are looking around at each other and going, none of us could do. Knowing what we know, seeing what we've seen, experiencing what we've experienced over these years, what can it be to do this? They're looking in the face of their best friend. I wonder, did any have a theory? Did any of them think, anyone, it's him? I wonder, did any of them hearts and so close, learned so much, and grown in their faith and their trust of Jesus with them from the beginning. And now they're looking at each other, and the scripture says that they looked at each other and wondering whom he hearts were. We always knew there were people out to get us. We always knew there were enemies. We knew there were even spiritual leaders, rabbis, and the elite of the temple. They're out to get us. They don't believe in Jesus like we do. But these 12 guys, 11 of my other friends, them and Jesus have been my circle. And if I could count on anybody, I should be able to count on those brothers. Looking. Almost too hard to believe, and if it came from anybody but Jesus, they'd probably be questioning it. But now the only question is, Peter can't not know him. He needs some insider information, and he turns to the disciple that's always described as the disciple that Jesus loved. That's John, the guy who wrote this guy. Peter turns to him. He's sitting next to Jesus, and he motions to him. Ask him. So John does. He obliges. He turns to Jesus and he asks him who he's talking about. And Jesus gives him this answer. He tells him there's going to be this sign. There's something that's going to happen. You'll notice when I dip my bread in the dip, whoever I give it to, that's the guy. Dinner goes on from there, right? The dinner proceeds, and they're all talking, and they're doing things, and people are moving about like they do in a dinner, and there's conversations, and they're maybe paying attention, but somehow we're told in the text that they miss the sign. They don't notice when Jesus does it. He does do it, and he hands it to Judas, and nobody picks up on the signal. And then Jesus says to him, hurry and do what you're going to do. Like he looks at Judas in the face and like you're the one, I've just given you the bread. Whatever you got to do, just do it fast. Get it over. Judas leaves. They heard him say, go do what you got to do. But we're told that their theory was, well, that's the treasurer. When he says, go do it fast, he's saying, go pay the people for this food we're eating. The money guy, so that must be what it's about. So Jesus' statement, they don't pick up on the sign. So for all of them standing there, for the other 11, they still have this statement hanging over their head. You get? They don't know that it's Judas. They don't know what Judas is headed out that door to do. They think he's just going to pay for the food. And so they're sitting there still with this statement in the back of their minds, wondering, what is Jesus talking about? What is going to happen? Who's going to betray him? What are they going to do that's going to sell him out like that? Judas leaves, and only he and Jesus answer to prayer is. Then Jesus starts talking about how it's time for him to enter into God's glory and how they can't come with him. He says, dear children, I'll be with you only a little longer. And as I told the Jewish leaders, you'll search for me, but you can't come where I'm going. I can only imagine that knowing what we know, that they are still that when they say, just like I told the Jewish leaders, I'm telling you the same thing, you can't go with me. Like he's lumping them in with the Jewish leaders. And the Jewish leaders are the people that they all know together are the enemy. They're the ones that are out to get Jesus. Saying, I told them and I'm telling you the same thing. Imagine how that feels. Lumping us in with them. Trust us. Haven't we been together through alone? Afraid one of us is betray him? On here. Now we're lumped in with the guys who are out to get him, and so he's going to leave us behind and move on by himself. And so then he gives them a new commandment to love one another, but Peter is still hung up. You're still thinking about this. That's the thing on the tip of his brain. Peter is still thinking, is it? What's going on? Could it be me? Maybe he's remembering that one time, right? Said the right thing and gotten such a beautiful response from Jesus. And the next minute he was saying, no, can't go in. Questioning Jesus' plan, and he said, get behind me, Satan. Am I the villain? Love you with it. I want to follow you. Simon Peter says, Lord, where are you going? Like you said you can't tell us. You said we can't go with you. But where are you going? Come on, I got to go. And Jesus says, you can't go with me now, but you will follow me later. Peter asks, but why can't I come? I'm ready to die. Like Jesus, I can't speak for any of the rest of these guys, but I'm telling you right now, if there's no one else you can trust, I'm telling you, I would die for you. Heart of hearts, really wants to follow Jesus. He really wants to prove that he's loyal. He wants to prove the depths of his love. He wants to prove that he meant it when he said, you're the Messiah. And everything in him is afraid of this thing that's hanging over them, and this betrayal. And so he asks, why can't I come with you? I'm ready to die for you. Statement of loyalty. He wants to believe that it's not him that's going to betray Jesus. Looking at Jesus saying, die for you. Please affirm that you believe me, that I die for you. I'm not the Then it gets worse. Makes this vow of loyalty. I want to go with you. I want to follow you. I would die for you. And Jesus turns to him and he tells Peter, you will deny me 3 times before the night's out. Doesn't know. They're looking at my Lord, my Messiah. Grapples, love Jesus, trying to tell him I love him and I follow him and I die for him. At me, and he's telling me, Graham, telling me that I'm going to deny him. That action, part of me, that's the question. Telling them, and I'm going to go now, and you can't follow right now, but you'll focus on Jesus. Didn't want bold pronouncements saying how loyal they were, how they were dying, statements. now I am giving you love each other. Just as I've loved the way that I've loved you guys, you should love for one another. Right? Job to look at the other 11 and say, well, I think it's him, or think it's him. It wasn't even that he at least wasn't bottom most, that he was job what job was job was guys. Change any question meant to look around at other Christians that got it more right than the others. Aren't meant to make the comparison game and go, at least I don't do that. At least I've got this. That challenges us to be honest with bold pronouncements that we shadow any kind in our hearts and try to talk that we are really. It made them go deeper and think more honestly about all that they'd done and all that they'd said and all the attitudes they had and all the thoughts that ran through their heads. And he wanted them to be honest with themselves. And he doesn't tell Peter he's the betrayer. He'd already told him how you can prove you're loyal is to love. But now he says, look, you want to talk about dying, you're going to deny me. Things are going to happen that are way less than perfect. You are not where you think you are spiritually. That's not easy to hear. Not easy to hear from Jesus. Not easy to hear from other people. It's not even easy to think about it yourself. And we talk ourselves out of it sometimes when we know deep down that we are flawed and that there's room that we have to grow and we should grow. And we hear the voice of Jesus beckoning us forward and trying to pull us deeper. And we pull back and we think other thoughts and we try to distract ourselves. And we worry about the question of where we stack up with others. And we don't think, Jesus, tell me who I am and tell me what I've done and measure me according to the level of your love. I want to love what you love, and I want to love like you love. And I want to love everyone that you send me to love. If I'm going to love like you, And that question for us, if I'm going to love like Jesus, do I have room for growth in that love? If he's the standard, do I have work to do? Because when I compare myself to other people, at least in my own mind, I stack up pretty good. I convince myself I'm doing okay. But when I hear the voice of Jesus, when I look into the face of Jesus, when I consider the way that Jesus loved the world, man, you realize how far you've got to go. And it's not meant to discourage us. It's not meant to send us into despair. It's just for us to say, I want to track after Jesus. I want to love the way that Jesus loved. And I'm going to stop comparing myself to other people, and I'm going to stop judging other people for where they are on that line. I just want to move forward. And my measuring stick for when I succeed is when I'm like Jesus. And every time I make a decision, and every time I go about my routines, and every time I enter into relationships with other people, and I'm less than loving like Jesus, I could do better. But he will help me do better if I trust him, and if the state of my heart is clean.